Okay, I believe we are rolling live. Okay, so we didn't meet the last couple of weeks because we had other programming in our usual slot. So sorry we missed that time together. But before that, we had reached the second to last. We reached the last stanza in the Lecha Dodi song, poem. And so I want to look at that, just review for a few moments what we saw beforehand. And, and then I want to spend the majority of our time together tonight discussing Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, which is Psalm 92, which is the psalm that appears right after Lecha Dodi in the Sidurim. So with that in mind, so let me just do a quick little recap. So about Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi, the opening two stanzas of Lecha Dodi focus on, not surprisingly, on Shabbat. Makes sense. I mean, a song that is about the acceptance and the receipt of Shabbat, and about Shabbat coming in, and the image of of a wedding here happening as let's go and greet the Shabbat. So the first two, we talked about Shamor v'Zachor b'Dibur Echad, Hishmiyanu Elam Yuchad, Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad, Hashem Multifer V'Latila. This is talking about that moment of revelation of Har Sinai. God, had, the Midrash explains it, had this multifaceted command of Shamor and Zachor at the same moment. That's related to the two different appearances, the two different texts, I guess we should say, as it relates to the Ten Commandments, the way Shabbat appears in the Ten Commandments in Exodus and then in Deuteronomy. The second stanza deals with greeting the Shabbat, Likrat Shabbat, Lechu v'Nacha, come let us go, because it's the source of all blessing, Ki hu Makor HaBaracha. This is really, this makes sense, something that one would sing about in the context of bringing in Shabbat. We then explore that the next, I believe it was 6, just want to make sure I got that right, 6 stanzas really then focus not on Shabbat per se in a direct way, but anyone remember what were the next 6? What was the theme? Just go to the gallery view here so I can see everybody who's here. Anybody remember what happened after the first 2 stanzas? We went to 6 stanzas that focused on
redemption.
Yeah, excellent, perfect, on redemption. The focus turned to redemption, and particularly we see imagery here of Yerushalayim as a destroyed city, and the image of it emerging from the dust, as it were. Na'ari me'afar kumi, right? Arise from the dust. Hit overi, get up, arise, awaken. Kiva orech, God's light has sort of come, and uri, awaken, shir da beiri, and sing out, because God's, Kvod Hashem alayach niglah, God has revealed his glory to the world now. And this is a theme, one after the other, talking about this very same idea. And so we come now to the very last stanza of Lecha Dodi. Let me actually share the screen here. I sent the source sheet in that email I sent out earlier. Hopefully you got it. And so hold on, just switch over here. Okay. So the very end here. Boi v'shalom. Let me get my laser pointer. Hold on. Here we go. Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala. Come in peace. Come b'shalom. Come in peace. Ateret ba'ala. Oh, crown of her husband. Okay, so we're inviting in the crown of her husband. Sounds like we're inviting in the kala, the bride. It's the crown of her husband. Who are we referring to here? Gam besimcha uvitzahala. How should we welcome the kala? The kala is welcome like we do in a wedding. I know sometimes we walk down at a wedding. We see a lot of weddings we go to, and it's very solemn and at that moment that the bride or the groom is walking down. Sometimes it'd be very festive, but almost I would say think more of what the moment when they're leaving the chuppah is like. That's like the kind of simcha. I think we're talking about here. Simcha v'tzahala is not just joy, but it's a jubilation. This is tzahala is like there's a extraordinary amount of simcha here, and so we have here that not when we greet the crown of her husband, it should be done b'simcha u'v'tzala. In what context should that happen? Toch emunei am segula, in the midst, right, or amongst those of the faithful ones. Toch emunei. The faithful ones of what? Of the Am Segula, of the treasured people. That this Kala going to meet the Chatan, and it should be done in the context of the Am Segula. That is clearly a reference to the Jewish people. The Jewish people are an Am Segula. It's a nation that is supposed to be that is a treasured people. It is a special people, and then the conclusion is boi chala. That come, enter in, O bride, enter in, O bride. So, anyone want to reflect here just for a moment? What on just that what you just read right now here. This is the conclusion. We talked about themes of Shabbat, the beginning, then of redemption, and here we are now. We're at the end, and we are saying that come in. This kala should come in. This bride should come in, who's the crown of her husband. So the question is, who's the bride? Who's the husband? Anyone want to reflect on that? No wrong answers here. It's opinions. And anybody want to venture just a thought on this one? So to me,
maybe.
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
I was just going to think that maybe Yerushalayim is the bride, because we want always to be in Yerushalayim. That's where we love Yerushalayim. That's where we feel we need to be. The husband, I don't know, us, we are the husband. We are searching for Yerushalayim, the way a husband searches for his bride.
Okay,
or a man searches for a future bride.
Okay, I hear that.
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, no, I appreciate it. That's an
I
interesting
think
thought. That's a very interesting thought.
could it be, Rabbi, it's Maryland, could it be
I'm-
Israel, people of Israel are the, what do you call it? The Baal
Mhm.
and the bride is the Am Israel, and Hashem is the Baal,
Okay,
co-
so
the groom, and Am Israel is the Kala.
right, so some will explain, right? Okay, interesting that the kala, that the bride is the Jewish people. This has been in similar to the way many interpret Shir HaShirim, the book of the Song of Songs, where the husband is God and the bride is the Jewish people. I think if I'm remembering correctly, I haven't looked at Shir HaShirim since Pesach now. Okay, it's interesting because the kala is supposed to come in. it to me almost sound like there are three players here. Again, one can interpret this in different ways here. It sounds like to me there are three players. There's the kala, there's the chatan, right? That's the ba'ala, mapi k, right? The ateret ba'ala, right? So there's a husband, the wife, and then there is the am segula, right? This is all supposed to happen. The bride is supposed to come in. Toch emunei, am segula, among the faithful ones of the treasured people. I don't know if that's like a separate player. Like there's like the people who are at the wedding, and then there's the bride and the groom. And I wonder here if part of this also is that the kala. Again, this is my thought. I think somewhere could be not just simply that it's the kala is the Jewish people, but maybe the kala is bringing together Shabbat. Like the kala really is Shabbat here, like a little bit like that Gemara that we saw many weeks ago, where they would go out to greet the Shabbat queen, the Shabbat Malka. So maybe here the bride is Shabbat, but also the bride represents redemption, right? The other topics were that the redemption, but maybe the idea is that, let's go back to the first one, that Shabbat is the bride, and who is the chatan? Maybe the chatan, who is the crowning, this is the crown of the husband. What is the crown of the husband? Something that people look at in this case it would be the bride, and they say this is the chatan is so lucky to have her, right? It's the crown of the husband. What aspect of Shabbat, what is Shabbat, is the crown of what, or of who? And maybe I want to suggest that it's in some ways it's the crown that God wears, right? That Shabbat, and when it is observed properly, right, it is what crowns God as king over the world. That is the way that the Jewish people testify every week that God created the world. We refrain from creative labor. We don't engage in any of it, simply because we are Jewish. Jews were criticized by the Greeks for being lazy because they didn't work on Saturday. They couldn't understand why. Now we have 2 days of a weekend throughout much of the world. But that was a chidush to the ancient world, that there should be a day of rest. That means you're giving up on earning a living and making ends meet. And maybe the idea here is that when the emunei am segula, when this marriage happens in the context, like when Shabbat and God are one, and when are they able to get married? When are Shabbat and God able to get married? Say, well, what is God? God doesn't need anybody in attendance to get married to Shabbat. It only becomes sort of a consummated marriage when it's toch emunei am segula, when the Jewish people are observing it, when the Jewish people are welcoming in that bride to sort of meet the chatan, and this is the the crown of that chatan, I'm suggesting God, then this marriage not just can happen, but it gets noticed. And Shabbat, when Shabbat is relevant because people are observing and keeping Shabbat, then it is the crown of God. God is now being crowned in the world. It brings that's how we bring God a little more they can make God a little more noticeable to the rest of the world. We observe Shabbat. We make him known to ourselves, and we strengthen our relationship, I think, with God in doing so. But that can only happen in the context of Shabbat being observed, meaning that the Kala can only meet the Chatan when they're Toch Emuneam Segula, when we are acknowledging Shabbat. We bring Shabbat in to meet the Chatan. We're escorting. We're the father and the mother escorting the bride to the guru. Not exactly, but. And then how does it end? Boi kala, right? Come in, right? We are the Am Segula, right? The faithful Am Segula, the faithful treasured people. When we bring in that bride, then there is a heightened sense of God in our lives as well, because Shabbat is the day where we have that neshama yitera. We have that little extra spiritual sense because we are able to pull ourselves back from the other 6 days of the week and all the stresses and challenges of work. Not saying it all magically goes away, but we have a much better chance at being able to connect with God because we don't have to rush out to the fields to harvest, or to rush to our desk to check our computers and to call our clients and to do all the things that have to be done during the week. That's my suggestion. It's a poem. I would love to ask Rav Shlomo Alka. That's what was the intention, but that's what happens when you study poetry. Okay. Any questions? Any other interpretations or thoughts that you've had as we were just talking about that? Okay. Well, if there are none, then what we will do is we will turn to our second source on the sheet. Oh, I should have done the following. Should have just pushed that. There we go. That number is the sources. So the second source is Psalm 92, because the next part of Kabbalat Shabbat is Psalm 92. I'm going to take a brief 30-second, maybe 60-second, not detour. I don't think it's a detour. Just want to explain something here at this moment. Everything up until now, if you're practical halacha, you were singing Lecha Dodi, etc., all the way through Lecha Dodi, all the early paragraphs of Tehillim, you still have not yet started Shabbat. Because these paragraphs really are dealing with, and particularly the song Lecha Dodi, is about accepting Shabbat. Boi Kala is clearly about bringing in the Shabbat. That's the call to bring in Shabbat right at the end of that song. And with the beginning of Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, when one says the words Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, you are declaring for yourself that it is Yom HaShabbat now. And so even if it's, let's say, light outside, but you are davening early, so by saying Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, you are accepting Shabbat upon yourself. Now, if you've already accepted it upon yourself, you lit candles and had in mind that, and let's say you were accepting Shabbat when you lighting candles, so it's already Shabbat. But let's say, this is more oftentimes, I guess, for me, I don't light the Shabbat candles. This is when Shabbat begins. So you have to stop doing melachot, or let's say you get pulled aside for something. If you've already started this paragraph, there's no going back. It is Shabbat already.
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why do we begin on certain days, like Shabbat Yom Tov, that we begin the tefillah with Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbat, and we don't do the earlier Sukkim?
So it's interesting. So first of all, there are probably, I'm sure you're very well aware that there are many traditions on this actually. Our shul, which follows the minhag of Nusach Ashkenaz, is that when a holiday falls out on Friday night, or it is we are just exiting a holiday on Friday night, or it is Chol HaMoed on that Friday night. So we do not recite everything that we've studied up until now, and you would only start with this Psalm 92. The reason we do that, according to, again, the Ashkenazic tradition, the Minhag Nusach Ashkenazi tradition, is it is improper to be singing and to give such a heavy focus on Shabbat, on the day of Shabbat, and almost as if we are ignoring the holiday that is either entering, that we are either currently in, or that is just leaving, and maybe he has not even left yet because we are saying Kabbalat Shabbat early on Friday as the Yom Tov is ending, if it's like a 3-day Yom Tov. And so it is. We don't say it because it is a bizayon to the Yom Tov. It's sort of disgraceful to the holiday to only sing about Shabbat and to not sing about the holiday. And that's why we don't do it. We say these two paragraphs because they are really important to say, because it is a verbal acceptance of Shabbat in some ways. When you declare Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat, this is the Psalm of Shabbat day, and you're saying it in the context of we're entering into Shabbat and we're going to say the Mizmor, the special song for Shabbat. That's a clear declaration. That's why we still say it even on the holiday when we eliminate everything that we've studied beforehand. So that's why we keep this in. And then the paragraph that follows Psalm 93 is a continuation of Psalm 92 in some ways. But you're aware, I'm sure, right, that I know in Nusach Sfard, so you have Ashkenazim who daven Nusach Sfard. They, I believe, say part of Lecha Dodi, not all of Lecha Dodi, if I'm not mistaken. I think that they say other parts of the earlier parts of Kabbalat Shabbat as well. I don't know what the Sephardic tradition is on this. Anyone know here what Edot HaMizrach, those who daven with that heritage? Anyone have familiar with what their tradition is? Not. I just don't know personally. But even if they do some of it, the idea of taking out some of it is because of not. It's a little bit like the challah. And you don't want to embarrass the challah on Friday night, so you cover. That's one of the opinions why you cover the challah, because you don't want to. You're not paying attention to it. You're paying attention to the wine first. Same idea here. It's about not paying attention to the Yom Tov, and you lose the feel of the day. That was the thought process. Okay. Okay, right. And by the way, actually, I see here in a siddur I have in front of me, Rav Yechiel Michael Epstein, author of the Aruch HaShulchan, writes this in Orach Chaim 270, that it would be a denigration of Yom Tov to elaborate the acceptance of Shabbat when we're not even making reference to Yom Tov. That's exactly what he says. Okay. So Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat, we now enter into Shabbat, and so this is the Psalm. This is the words of the Psalm. This is the Psalm for the Shabbat day. Couldn't pick a better Psalm. It's literally titled that. So it fits that we should say this on Shabbat. But I want you to all read.
Rabbi, forgive me 1 second. I looked up the Syrian minhag. As they say Lecha Dodi.
They say it. Okay.
Yeah, I just looked in a Machzor.
So right, they don't change it. Okay. Again, I understand. This is also, people have a debate every Yom Tov that falls out on Friday night. Do we sing Shalom Aleichem or do we not sing Shalom Aleichem? It's the same question. It's the question of, is it giving too much attention to Shabbat at the expense of the Yom Tov? That's the whole debate of that. It's a debate, and I'm not surprised that there are varying minhagim here on this. I know that Nusach Sfard, they do say the first three and the last three of Lecha Dodi. Something like that. Okay. Okay, so Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat. What can we say about this? Okay, so it's a psalm about Shabbat day. So let me just take a quick poll, everybody. What would you expect to see in a psalm that's about Shabbat? Well, without reading ahead, quick reactions. What would you think in a psalm that's dedicated to Shabbat? You might find the following in it. Go ahead, fill in the blank. Anybody, you can just
Praise of God. Praise
what did
of
you say,
God.
Barbara?
praise of God.
Praise of God. Okay, good. What else? Anybody?
עושה מעשה בראשית.
Okay, something about creation, the seventh day. Okay, good. What else could my have thought would be in there?
Maybe even Mitzrayim.
Mitzrayim. This is our chance to read. God took us out. In Devarim, it says that v'zacharta ki ever hayita be'eretz Yisrael. The part of Shabbat is about letting everybody rest because you didn't get to rest in Egypt. Good. There is some of that in here, but it's embedded. Okay. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? What you might have thought should be in a paragraph about Shabbat?
That you should be happy and joyous and merry and festive.
Okay, I would have thought something about the spirit of the day of Shabbat. Exactly. Something that describes what the feeling of Shabbat is supposed to be.
Yom shekulo Shabbat u'menucha.
Yeah, day of menucha, day of rest. So a day of the good. So you're all on the same page. I'm going to read for purposes of time. I'm going to read the English from start to finish, and I want you to point out a problem. This is a psalm, a song for the Shabbat day. It is good to praise the Lord, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night, with a 10-stringed harp, with voice and lyre together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, O Lord. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, O Lord. How very subtle your designs. A brutish man cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. Though all the wicked sprout like grass, though all evildoers blossom, it is only that they may be destroyed forever. But you are exalted, O Lord, for all time. Surely your enemies, O Lord, surely your enemies perish. All evildoers are scattered. You raise my horn high like that of a wild ox. I am soaked in freshening oil. I shall see the defeat of my watchful foes. Hear of the downfall of the wicked who beset me. The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of the Lord, they flourish in the courts of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that the Lord is upright, my rock, in whom there is no wrong. I want to ask you, my friends, what's the problem? Or what problem do you see here?
The instruments.
What about?
play-
They're playing.
Do we play instruments on Shabbos? I don't know.
Okay, good. Yeah, we don't. That's
No.
probably.
But in the Beit HaMikdash they did.
Exactly. It's probably a rabbinic prohibition not to play musical instruments.
Okay.
But what's the deeper problem here on this? Right? It's a Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. And you guys all had suggestions about what should be in this paragraph.
It has nothing to do with any of those suggestions.
It has nothing to do with Shabbat. It's Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. And we're off and running. Tov la'gibor chesdecha l'zam l'shim chalayon la'gibor chesdecha v'imrat chabalayot. Where's Shabbos? Where is Shabbos? I don't see Shabbat at all here. What? In fact, what is this? What is this psalm talking about? What is it dealing with?
What God does.
Okay, what God does. Let's dig deeper. Let's get even more specific. What is this? What is the? If you had to give me one sentence, what is going on here? What are we dealing with? What's the deeper question that is being dealt with by the poet here?
There's a lot of enemies.
What was that, Barbara?
Enemies. There's a bunch of things in here about our.
Okay, excellent. So Barbara's picking up on there's a lot of going enemies here. And what is happening with the enemies, actually? What is the person you're writing this perceiving? What was happening to them? Let's follow my laser pointer here. They acknowledge here that bifroach rishaim kemo esev vayatzitzu kol po'ale avim. What is happening right now for this person who is writing this? They are seeing the wicked are sprouting like grass. And those who are evildoers are blossoming. And what does this person believe at the end of the day? At the end of the day, God will take care of it. You may say that this person is described, that this psalm is describing the question of or dealing with the problem of tzaddik viralo, virosha v'tovlo. The problem of a righteous person who is struggling under the enemy and suffering. Look, why is it that the righteous will bloom, one day? Will, the righteous bloom like a date palm? They'll have their day, basically. Right? God will take care of the enemies. Future tense. We're dealing here with the problem of why do bad things happen to good people? And why is it that these bad people, good things are happening for them? It's a big theological question. That, if you ask me, that's what we're dealing with here. Someone wrote something in the chat box. Let me just check it out. Did Adam Harishon write this? Okay, so Adam asked me the question, did Adam Harishon write this Tehillim? We're going to come to your question. The answer is no, Adam, but you're on to something. And we'll get there in just a moment. I'm avoiding saying that David HaMelech wrote this Psalm of Tehillim because Rashi doesn't believe that David HaMelech was the one who wrote this Psalm.
It doesn't sound like David HaMelech.
What was that?
Doesn't sound like David HaMelech.
It does. There's something that sounds a little different about these series of Mizmor Tehillim that starts a couple of chapters back. So you're good. Everyone's picking up on this. Let's read a little Gemara here on the side. Let's put that aside. We're going to deal with our question in a moment. How does this have anything to do with Shabbat? I mean, if this is the Mizmor for Shabbat, it should have a Shabbat message for us who study it. So we'll have to dig deep to really find that Shabbat message. It's not there on the surface. Let's learn a Gemara together. Put it to the side. Now I'm going to put a few sources on the table here that are important to understanding this paragraph. The Gemara Bava Batra 14b asks the question about who authored many of the different books of the Bible. So, Umik Tavan, right? Who wrote all the different books? The Gemara asks. Right? There's the 5 books of the Torah. There's Sefer Yehoshua. There's the book of the whole series. Just to give you a taste here, Moshe wrote Kotav Sifro. He wrote his book, the Torah. Don't mistake that to mean he wrote it without God telling him what to write. It means that it's Torah Moshe. He wrote the book of the Torah. He wrote the Torah. Uparshat Bilam. Speaking of the next week's Parsha, Parshat Balak has an interesting section in it. I can't go into this now. This would take it too long to explain. But if you look in a Sefer Torah, there are no breaks in the section that describes the story of Bilam. And the story of Bilam is told from a very interesting perspective. And it's so one may, the story of Bilam in the Torah, one may have had a thought that it may have been written by a different person, even it's stylistically. Nevertheless, Moshe wrote it. Okay. Moshe also wrote, according to tradition, he wrote the book of Eov, the book of Job. Yehoshua wrote his book, named Yehoshua, and he also wrote, according to this opinion, the last 8 psukim in the Torah, because the last 8 psukim in the Torah describe what? Anyone know what the last 8 verses in the book in the Torah, in the Parshat Vazot HaBracha?
Moshe's death.
Moshe's death. So one opinion, this doesn't reflect the other opinion, but there are 2 opinions. One opinion is that Moshe didn't write about his death. How could he? He died. How can you write in the past tense, Vayamat Moshe? You can't write that Moshe, and Moshe died. One opinion is that he did write it. He wrote it while he was crying because he was writing the future, and he understood he was going to die. Anyways, but according to this tradition, Yehoshua wrote the last 8 verses of the Torah. Shmuel wrote his Sefer called Sefer Shmuel. And he also wrote the book of Shoftim and the book of Ruth. David, King David, Katav Sefer Tehillim, he was the one that wrote Sefer Tehillim Al Yedei Asara Zikanim. I'm going to teach you something that maybe you didn't know until now. Everybody always attributes the book of Psalms to King David, King David, King David. And it's true, he wrote it. But he wrote it Al Yedei is usually, by the means of, through 10 elders. Now, I don't know what Al Yedei means practically speaking. Did these 10 write it? And then David HaMelech, some of them. I'm sure David HaMelech wrote most of them, but there were 10 other authors who helped write some of them. And they wrote it, and then David HaMelech, to be, not so sophisticated about it, he stuck it in the book. Or did David write it in their, did David look at, their story in life and he kind of wrote from their perspective? So I don't know what Al Yedei exactly means. And I'm open to different interpretations here. Who were the 10 who were part of the book of Tehillim? So, one was Adam HaRishon, the first person to ever live. Malki Tzedek. You may remember Malki Tzedek was the king of Shalem from the stories of Abraham. Abraham also wrote, or was, at least from his perspective, it was written from his perspective. Ve'al Yedei Moshe, and Moshe's perspective, or Moshe himself, I don't know. And then we have 3 more minor characters who we do not really know who they were. They appear in the book of Tehillim, and that's why they're given credit. Heman, not Haman, Yidutun, and Asaph. You may be familiar with paragraphs that begin Mizmor, or paragraph Mizmor Asaph. Who is Asaph? Probably a Kohen or a Levi or something like that, but we don't really know. Let's take a look here. Rashi, in his commentary on the Gemara here, let's focus on one thing. Where is it? Al Yedei Moshe, right here, where my laser pointer is. Let's focus on Moshe for a second. What did Moshe help write? Or what did Moshe help inspire, at least? So he helped Tefillah LeMoshe, that's Psalm 90. V'chol echad asar mizmorim kisidron, and the next 11 chapters in order. Which would mean, because there's a certain stylistic feature, I guess, of those Psalms, and it begins with Tefillah LeMoshe, the prayer of Moshe. So our sages saw that this was the work of Moshe, or at least inspired by Moshe, which means that Psalm 92, Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat, according to what Rashi is explaining here, was authored, or at the very least inspired by, Moshe Rabbeinu. That's important to understanding the paragraph, because this person is dealing with a huge question of why do bad things happen to good people and why do good things happen to bad people? Okay, by the way, hopefully this was interesting just in and of itself, that there are different voices who are a part of the book of Psalms. Okay, now, in order to, again, further understand this story, we have to understand what happens in the chapter 5 of the book of Exodus. What's going on here? We have the Jewish people all excited because Moshe has arrived to town and he has told them that God has sent them and God has heard your cries and God is going to take you out of Egypt. And so what does Moshe do? He goes in front of Paro. And look what he says to Paro. He and his brother Aaron say to Paro, let my people go, God said. I'm giving you a message, Paro. God said, let my people go, so that they can celebrate to me in the desert. Paro says back, who is this God you speak of that I should listen to him? I'm Paro. Who you're just making up gods now? I never heard of this one. And furthermore, lo yadati et Hashem. I don't even know. First of all, who is this God that he's stronger than me? And first of all, I never even heard of him. And sorry, second of all, I never even heard of him. Lo yadati et Hashem. And by the way, third, the answer is no. I'm not saying the people. Ve'omru. So Moshe and Aaron say, okay. So the God of the Hebrews, has manifested himself to us, right? He called to us. We're telling you the truth. The God of the Hebrews said, 3 days, let us go so we can serve and sacrifice to our God. Lest he strike us with some sort of plague of dever, a pestilence plague, or strike us by the sword. It's like God's going to hurt us if we don't go and worship him. So what does the king of Egypt say? Lama Moshe v'Aharon tafriu et ha'amim ma'asav. Says to them, why are you distracting those people from working? You've gotten their hopes up. They think they're going to leave. L'chu l'sivlotechem. Go back to work. Get back to work. Paro said, Vayomer Paro, hein rabim ata am haaretz. Moshe continued. Now, I believe he said this part not to Moshe and Aaron anymore, but to the people around him. And he said to them, these people are a lot of them. V'yishbatem otam misivlotam. And you would have them stop working. Maybe he's talking to them. I don't know. Right? But you can't have them stop working. There are too many of them. If they start rebelling and they start getting into this thing, first of all, our economy is going to crumble, and who knows what they might try to do if they try to rebel. Vayitzav Paro bayomahu, and so Paro decreed on that day, he commanded on that day to the taskmasters of the nation and the shotrav and the officers, saying, stop giving them straw so that they can make the bricks with the straw like we used to give them. We used to help them. Let them go and let them get their own straw, cut down their own straw and work harder. And but the quota, the number of bricks that they have to produce, that they were producing, the day before, that stays the same. Lo tigru mimenu. Now here comes some key words and key phrases till the end. Ki nir pimheim, for they are lazy, they are shirkers, and so we can't start to give them an inch to let them become lazy. Let them work harder. If they have time to al kain hein so akin lemor, they're lazy, and if they have time, what do? They start yelling out, let's go worship God. If they have time to think about worshiping their God, then they are not working hard enough. Let them work harder. What does he tell his workers, his taskmasters? Tichbad ha'avoda al ha'anashim v'ya'asuva. Make the work harder for the men and make them keep doing it. V'ya'asuva. Let them just be working 24/7. Va'al yishu v'divrei shaker. Let them not turn. Let them not pay attention to words that are filled with lies. Now the question is, what words are filled with lies? My friends, let me ask you, what words do you think were filled with lies? That Paro is so concerned about these lies. What lies were the Jewish people hearing according to him?
That their God would save them?
Okay, sounds like Moshe was getting through to them. It's interesting, but divrei shakir, don't turn to these words of lies. It sounds like Paro's concerned about this fellow Moshe. He's telling them something. And from his perspective, he thinks it's a lie. And that lie is going to affect the GDP of Egypt, and it's going to affect whether or not he can keep the Jewish people enslaved. Take a look at this midrash. The midrash says the following. I'm going to pick up from the middle of the midrash. Midrash talking about this last phrase, Tichbar ha'avoda al nashim, make the work harder for the men. Milamed, what do we learn from this according to the midrash? Shehayu b'yadam megilot. That from the whole end of the story, we learn that actually the Jewish people had megilot, scrolls with them in Egypt. Shehayu mishta'ashin bahem mishabat l'shabat. And they would delight in them and really and enjoy them and read them and celebrate Shabbat with them. Take a look here. V'al yishu, it's a play on words here. He's saying that the word yishu, which literally means to turn, has embedded in it the idea of mishta'ashin, of really being able to enjoy and to delight in and to find nachat in, in these megilot, in these scrolls. There was something in these scrolls that gave them vigor on Shabbat. Lomar, what did the scrolls say? Shakadosh Baruch Hu Go'olam. The scrolls said that God is the Redeemer. Lefi shayu nachin b'Shabbat. Since they had this rest and this recuperation and this scrolls which gave them confidence, Paro said, make the work harder for the men, and they need to be consistently working so they do not turn to the words that were lies, the lies of God. Al yihu mishta'ashin v'al yihu nefishin b'yom HaShabbat. Let them not be able to dwell in and to enjoy and delight in whatever and to get the hope from those scrolls, and let them not be refreshed on Shabbos. They are getting refreshed. And it's okay. We thought it was a good idea to give them a few days, day off a week. You know what? It's a bad idea because they're becoming rejuvenated, not just physically, but they are becoming rejuvenated spiritually with lies. Take a look. This is a work called the Emet LiYaakov. It was written by Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. He was a large rabbinic figure in the previous century, and he wrote a commentary on the Chumash called Emet LiYaakov. Probably he would have called it Emes LiYaakov. Sorry, he's from the more Ashkenazi yeshivish world. Excuse me. And he picks up on all of these sources that I've just laid out to you, and how it all connects to Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat. Let's read a little bit. The beginning here, he just quotes the midrash that I read to you, and he says, "Hine lo matzinu b'shum makom ma hayu megilot elu." What was the text of these megilot, of these scrolls that they would read on Shabbat? Uma Allah b'sofan. At the end of the day, what was their message? What was? Okay, obviously it gave them. It gave them strength to believe that God was the Redeemer, but what was it? How did it get there? Did it just say God is the Redeemer on the scroll? Or I'm sure it didn't just say that. It had some inspirational way to drive that message home. So he writes, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, "Allah b'dati lomar," and it sort of appeared in my mind to say the following about this. If you infer very carefully about Psalm 92, Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat, Nimtza, you'll find Shalom Nimtza Sham Shum Zecher Yom HaShabbat, as we talked about. It doesn't talk about Shabbos. There is no Shabbos in Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos. What's going on? Adarabba, on the contrary, Besof HaMizmor, Bi'er Lanu, it explains to us, Shetachli kavanat hamizmor, the purpose and the intention of this psalm, hu lahagid ki yashar Hashem, that God is is straight in his ways. Tsuri he's our rock. Hanu velo avlata bo, and there's no wrongdoing in God. Right? We may, right? Because what's the problem? What we may complain to God, God, why do bad people always win? And why do the good people always suffer? But God is good. God is not doing anything wrong. Being Cain ain't zo kavanat HaShabbat. It's not about Shabbat. It's about Tzaddik v'Ralo. Why do bad things happen to good people? V'nira shemizmor zehaya echad mehamegilot. He says, maybe it appears to me that this is one of the scrolls. Shehishta bahen b'yom HaShabbat b'Mitzrayim. That on their day of rest in Egypt, this was one of the messages that Moshe was giving over to the people. This was the drasha that Moshe was giving them on Shabbos morning. This didn't happen, by the way. I don't know where Rav Yaakov got this from. Paro at some point agreed to give a day of Shabbos to the people. This I acknowledge that this is true, by the way. Not that there's a day of Shabbos, like Saturday you're off, but there was a day or a time they had off. And we know this because Paro made the work harder because he wanted them not to have any rest time. So in their times of rest, what would Moshe do? Right? Whatever. So there were times of rest. Moshe chose Saturday. Okay, fine. I don't know if this is actually factual. But nonetheless, see there Moshe. What did Moshe do with this rest time? Sheyit asfu b'nei Yisrael. He gathered the people together. V'yishta'ashu b'megiloteim. And he, had them meditating and dwelling over and poring over these scrolls. Aval achar sheba Moshe leParo. Moshe then went to Paro. Send away the people. Paro made the decree. Gazar aleim shiyasu avodacham gam b'Shabbat. Now, you know what? Work on Shabbat too. 24/7. I'm tired of you listening to what's in those scrolls you guys read. Moshe gets up there on Shabbos morning and he's telling you lies. You think you're going to get out of Egypt? Work harder. Make it worse for them. You can't go to shul on Shabbos. You're not going to have time to read the scrolls. You're not going to have time to hear what Moshe has to say. And what happens? What happens? People didn't listen to Moshe after it got harder. Lo shamu al Moshe mikot seruach u'mi'avodah kasha. Their spirit was broken, and the work was too hard, and they gave up on all the things that Moshe was telling them. Paro initially succeeded. V'acharei ha'iyun, he says, after I looked into all this, nirali dimikevan shematzina shemizmor shir yom HaShabbat Moshe Rabbeinu amaro. Moshe said this, like Rashi said. In the Rashi that we saw in Bava Batra, Tefillah Moshe is one of those 11 chapters, starting with Psalm 90, that Moshe was the author of, or at least in the inspiration of. Im Kain, therefore, if so, I should say, Yesh Lomar, we can say, the Mizmor Zeh, Psalm 92 was one of the Megillot. Hadon be'inyan shirosha v'tovlo v'tzadik v'ralo was dealing with the issue of wicked people, the good things happen to them, and righteous people, bad things happen to them. When was this question most powerful, most noticeable in Jewish history? At moments of tragedy. You could ask this question during the Holocaust. And to go back to the times of the Bible, being enslaved. Once they saw the Anania Kavod in the desert, the Jewish people, okay, when they sinned, they made a mistake and bad things happened, okay, but they did something wrong, right? They were being punished for, sending the spies, and they came back with the negative report. They spoke bad about the land of Israel. So they were punished because they believed that. They made a golden calf, and they were punished for the golden calf, right? They did something. But B'shosha hayu b'nei Yisrael Mitzrayim, when they were in Egypt, and they saw with their eyes, ki tzadikim heim leumat hamitzrim. Compared to those guys, we're tzadikim, we're righteous. Those wicked enslaved, slave slave masters, excuse me. The sof davar hamitzrim mishtabdim bahem, and yet these bad, evil, wicked Egyptians are enslaving us. Va'az Adon HaNevi'im, the greatest of the prophets, Moshe, Nizdakek l'she'ela zo. This was the big question he had to deal with in Egypt that the people were struggling with. How come the bad people are succeeding and we are slaves? We're good people. What did we do? V'lachein, la'achar shekiblu Yisrael miparo et HaShabbat kiyom menucha. When they had this time of rest in Egypt, what were they doing with the time off? Right? With this day. They went to sit in front of Moshe. We want to hear something from our ancestors. We want to hear their teachings. Moshe, give us a drasha. What was the drasha Moshe gave every Shabbos, essentially? What was the message every Shabbos morning when Moshe got up at the pulpit? Kamuvan le'odeid et rucham, to awaken their spirit. Don't let the question of the righteous ones who suffer get you down. V'lazeh tikein Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashalom. Moshe instituted Mizmor zeh liyom HaShabbat. V'hainu lahagid baboker chasdecha ve'emunotcha ba'leilot. In the darkness of Egypt, have faith. Kolomar afilu b'shat tokef hagalut, even in the darkest hour of exile, which is like nighttime. Afal pikein aleinu lomar magadu masecha. We should still acknowledge the great deeds of God. Ma'od v'amku machshotecha. How deep are the things that He considers. Shebefroach l'shoyim. Yeah, it looks like the bad guys are blossoming. They're sprouting like grass, and the evildoers are blossoming. Hainu rak l'hishamdem adayad. My friends, he would get up at the pulpit and say, my friends, God will one day take care of them. He will give them what's coming. The enemy will one day be destroyed. They will be scattered. And that was ultimately what happened to the Egyptians. Let's come back over here now. Let's go back to Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat. This is the Psalm of Shabbat, because this is what they did on Shabbat with their time off. This is what Moshe was telling them. That it looks, we're going to speak your praises, and you're going to play musical instruments to you, and we're going to rejoice in you, God. Because yes, it looks bleak out there. The bad guys are winning all the time. They're enslaving us. Tzaddik katamar yifrach. The righteous will one day bloom like a date tree, like a date palm. We are like mighty cedars. It's hard to chop a cedar down. They're beating us, and they're this and that, like a mighty, we're going to thrive like a cedar tree. Shetulim beveit Hashem bechatrot Elokeinu yafrichu, and they will flourish in the courtyard of God. One day, you mark my words, Moshe told the people. One day, it will happen. Don't give up hope. One day, it will happen. Speak of God and His uprightness. Don't look at God and start asking questions and saying that God isn't fair. God is this, God is that. God is righteous. And He will one day make it happen. Trust me. That was the drasha on Shabbos in Egypt. And I think it teaches us there's another aspect of Shabbat. It's not just simply a day to rest from the work that we've done. It's about that, yes. Is it a day that recalls the creation of the world? Yes, it is. But it is also a day that allows us to reset and to deal with the problems in our lives, not deal with them, to gain strength to deal with the problems the other 6 days of the week. We struggle with this and with that, and we come to the Shabbos table with our families, and the hope is that the family around us and our friends around us give us the strength to push through the problems that we face the other 6 days, and to give us chizuk, to give us strength when we are down, to keep going. And that is a lot what Shabbat is about. It's about garnering the strength that we need for the rest of the week. And we get that from the people around us. And I think that's how we enter into Shabbat. Okay, at the beginning of Shabbat, the first words we say when we accept Shabbat, Mizmor, Shir, Yom HaShabbat. On the surface, it looks like it has nothing to do with Shabbat, but it has everything to do with it. It is all about the spirit of Shabbat day as a day of giving us strength when we may lack it because of what happened in the previous 6. Hopefully this gives us some insight and some appreciation about this Mizmor of Tehillim. And with that, I'll stop. I'll take any questions you have or any ideas or thoughts that you have. Anybody want to share something at this point? Well, if not, I hope that was helpful. And it's been a wonderful year learning together. We did this, I think, 23 or 24 times over the course of the academic year, I guess we'll call it. And I truly enjoyed it. And I look forward to continuing to be able to learn with you all next fall after the holidays in October. And we'll figure out exactly what the topic is, but we'll continue learning together. And I wish everybody else, obviously I see hopefully many of you continuously throughout the summer in shul, but for now our class will be on hiatus, and I hope you have a great summer.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You too.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Great.
You too.
Wonderful.
Everyone. Very
Wonderful.
insightful.
Thank you.